My familiarity with the Tree of Life Synagogue began in 1996. I was a college student attending the University of Pittsburgh and working as a youth advisor at Temple Beth Shalom in Squirrel Hill. At the end of my junior year, there was a fairly substantial fire. There was no one in the building at the time, thank God, and the physical structure, and especially the Sifrei Torah, were unharmed. But there was a tremendous amount of smoke damage. And so the edifice, whole building, was rendered temporarily unusable. And so I left Pittsburgh for the summer with all these questions lingering in the air. Right? Where would we hold services? How would we go on as a congregation? So I left. I came back. And by the time I got back to the Berg, as we called it, for my senior year, another conservative congregation just a half mile away had agreed to offer us sanctuary. And so for that year, the whole congregation Beth Shalom met in the social hall of the Tree of Life Synagogue. And I led our teen services in one of their classrooms every other week. That is all you need to know about Tree of Life Synagogue. I was not surprised that now, some 20 years later, there were 3 different congregations all meeting in that building. Tree of Life, Or L'Simcha, and New Light. That is just the kind of place Tree of Life is. It's a sanctuary even for other sanctuaries. It also tells you a lot about the Squirrel Hill neighborhood in Pittsburgh. It is a microcosm of American Jewish life in all its expressions. It is truly a sacred community. It is not an accident that I was living in Pittsburgh, and that's where I decided that I wanted to be a rabbi. And knowing the sacred, welcoming sanctuary that Tree of Life is, knowing the warm, tight-knit Jewish community that is Squirrel Hill, it just makes it all the more grotesque, the violation of last Saturday's terrorist attack, all the more offensive and intolerable. The 11 individuals who we remember now, those souls that were stolen even as they turned to God in sacred devotion. They were not only the glue that held together their congregations, they were the epitome of the kind and engaged Jews that make up the Squirrel Hill community. Their blood spilled in that sacrosanct sanctuary in the throes of holy devotion on the most holy day of the week. It is the ultimate desecration. The ancient Greeks, right, in the Hanukkah story, a story that most of us know, the ancient Greeks, they used some pig's blood to desecrate the Holy Temple, the most sacred space in the history of the Jewish people. As far as we're concerned, the most sacred space in the history of the world, at least man-made space. And a little bit of pig's blood was all it took to render it unusable for sacred purposes. If a little bit of pig's blood is enough to desecrate that most sacred sanctuary, then we don't even have a word for the kind of desecration of this event. Last Saturday, one Jewish sanctuary was desecrated, but all of our sanctuaries, everywhere in the country, everywhere in the world even, were violated. The attack occurred in Pittsburgh, but the terror immediately infested every synagogue everywhere. And yet, even as the Maccabees redeemed the temple of old, found a way to cleanse it and to renew it, so too we must find a way to redeem our sanctuaries, to cleanse them, to relight the sacred lamps and shine their burning light from these holy places into the darkness that seems to be infringing upon us from every side. But where do we start? Well, we start with the kinds of gatherings we saw at Bethel on Saturday morning and across the nation on weekdays, on Shabbat. We start by being together, by praying together, by crying together, by singing together. By being together, we can drive away the impinging dark and cold from our shocked and tired souls. The founders of this republic had a vision articulated by our first president in a letter that he wrote to the Jewish community of Newport, Rhode Island. They were nervous here in this new nation, right? Over thousands of years, they'd known persecution of every sort, in every place. And here's this new nation with a new kind of government. And they wanted assurance. And so they wrote to this new kind of leader, this democratically elected president. And he replied to them. In his reply, he quoted Micah. He said, "May the children of the stock of Abraham who dwell in this land continue to merit and enjoy the goodwill of the other inhabitants, while every one shall sit in safety under his own vine and fig tree, and there shall be none to make him afraid." And he continued, "May the Father of all mercies scatter light and not darkness upon our paths, and make us all in our several vocations useful here, and in his own due time and way, everlastingly happy." That is the message we need to be spreading now, every one of us, and no other message can be tolerated, that everyone shall sit in the safety under his own vine and fig tree, and there shall be none to make him afraid. But how do we do it? How do we be unafraid, having experienced what we just experienced? How do we be unafraid when the forces of evil seek to terrify us? Yes, we will and we do and we must take every precaution for our own security, but that is not enough. That will never be enough for the long-term welfare of the Jewish people, and not enough to turn the tide of hate that threatens all people. How do we do that? The great Hasidic teacher, Rabbi Nachman of Bratslav, used to say, "Kol ha'olam kulo gesher tsar me'od," right? The whole world is a very narrow bridge. V'ha'ikar lo lefachid klal. And the main thing is not to be afraid at all. So here we are going through life, walking on this narrow bridge. And in a space that is so narrow, we are going to encounter all kinds of people. People who are different from us. You can't help it, right? It's a very narrow bridge. You can't only meet with people you think are the same as you. You're going to meet people who are lighter than you and who are darker than you, who dress differently from you, who worship differently from you. You're going to encounter people who love differently from you and who speak differently from you. In this narrow space, we can't control that. It's just the way it's going to be. But you know what we can control? We can control the way that we meet them. Will we meet them with love, or will we fear them? Will we learn from our differences or use them to divide us? Will we ignore and demean or dignify and raise up? That we can control. And my friends, we have to stand on this bridge together and love each other. We have to stand on this bridge together and learn from each other. We have to stand on this bridge together and dignify one another. And the main thing, as Rabbi Nachman says, is not to be afraid at all. We will not give in to terrorism by being terrified. We may be scared. Of course, we will inevitably be scared, but we must not be cowed. A few days from now will be the 80th anniversary of Kristallnacht, the Night of Broken Glass. 80 years ago, in Nazi Germany, synagogues were desecrated, Jewish businesses were attacked, and dozens were killed. The German police looked the other way or even helped out with the violence. And so many fellow German citizens simply looked the other way and ignored what was happening. There is a great temptation to make comparisons to what happened last week, because there is one thing that is the same. The hate is the same. The very same hate that sparked the Night of Broken Glass is still extant. And yes, extant even here in this beautiful country, because anti-Semitism is going to continue to exist, and it is not going away. However, thank God the similarities end there. in this case, non-Jewish police, right? 4 officers ran into the Tree of Life synagogue, putting their own lives at risk to save the lives of Jews. 3 were injured, 3 were shot, and 4 were injured. May their healing be complete. That is unprecedented. And the outpouring of love and support from our neighbors, I've never seen anything like it. We got cards signed by all the members of the church. This one from St. Andrew's, card from the Muslim community, local Muslim community, at Christ in St. Luke's, right? They passed a resolution because Episcopalians, they like to pass resolutions, but a resolution in support of the Jewish community, condemning the violence that took place, and most beautifully dedicating this past Sunday's performance of the Brahms Requiem to the 11 victims who fell in the Tree of Life synagogue on that Saturday. And that outpouring of love, it's not like anything in our history. It should never have to be proven. On Monday morning after the massacre, my son Elijah walks out onto our front step and he says, "Ima, someone brought you flowers." And I said, "What?" No one's supposed to buy Tammy flowers except me, so I went running out to see what it was, and there were these beautiful mums on the porch with a card, and the card said, "Hi, you don't know us, but our daughter goes to school with your son, and we just wanted you to know how sorry we are, how this has impacted us, how it fills us with sorrow. We're a new Navy family here, and we just wanted you to know that we cared." And Tammy cried. And I cried, right? That is different. The support from churches, from mosques, the hugs and the handshakes from friends, coworkers, even strangers on the street on my way to synagogue Saturday morning to deliver this talk. This lovely African-American woman walking her dog stopped me and said, "Oh, excuse me. I just want to tell you how sorry I am for what happened to your community in Pittsburgh. That's just awful. You should know that we're thinking of you and we're with you." I didn't know what to say. Say thank you. But it runs counter to thousands of years of Jewish experience. It makes all the difference in the world. And there were so many people with us, friends and allies of the Jewish community in our sanctuary, at all the different sanctuaries here in Norfolk and Virginia Beach, and I know all over this country. That is different. And it is beautiful, and it is how we will shine the light from our sanctuaries and blot out this darkness. 3,000 years of Jewish history has taught us that anti-Semitism will always exist. Recent history has shown us that hate of all kinds is bubbling up from the pits in which it lurks. Now is the time we must stand together unafraid. Stand up together against hate, and we will redeem our sanctuaries and rekindle the light of hope and love and dignity. And with it, as President Washington hoped, we will disperse the darkness and make us in our several vocations useful here and in his own due time and way everlastingly happy. May that beautiful prayer of our president so long ago, echoing the work of the Maccabees at rededicating their sanctuary, carry us forward in rededication, spreading the light of goodness, the light of love, the light of understanding, and the light of hope to all those upon whom the darkness is encroaching. Amen.